Hi there, my name is DJ Hombre from Digital DJ Tips, and today I'm looking at DJ2, a new app by Algoriddim. So when you first come into DJ2, you'll notice that the view is very similar to the original version of DJ. You've got a twin turntable type view here, very realistic in terms of how it looks there. You've got the sync button at the top of the pitch slider with pitch bend at the bottom and key lock underneath that as well. Something to note that DJ2 is available for iOS 6 and upward devices only, so older versions of the iPad and iPhone, iPod Touch, this won't work with those. There's a couple of other buttons on the screen, but we'll get to those in a moment. So let's start by loading a track. So the track library page is fairly small to start with, but you can extend this out by pressing this handy little button up in the corner there. And you can also flick to nighttime view, which is a bit easier to read in dark situations, such as nightclubs and parties. So the library view, you can sort on all sorts of things. So you've got a sort there, and you can also filter by doing a search. The other interesting feature now is the analyze. So that allows you to analyze your whole music library in one fell swoop up front before your gig, so you know that all your beat grids, all your waveforms and all your BPMs will have been calculated before you get to the gig, so tracks should load super quick. Along the bottom you've got the link to the iTunes store, which allows you to download and access tracks on the fly, so if you have any requests come in, that's a pretty useful feature. And you've got the usual ways of slicing through your music collection here. Now you see some of these tracks have got little blue lines against them. That means they're added to a queue. So if you've got a queue button here as well, you can see a queue button. So that's pretty neat too. So that means in a quiet section of a gig you could be searching for the next track, and you can build up a nice bunch of tracks to play during the evening. It's a bit like rummaging through your crate of tracks and pulling out vinyl as you go along. Another neat trick here is that if you press and hold, you get the ability to preview as well as adding to or removing from a queue. So you could preview it. So if you've got split stereo queuing enabled, or if you've got a MIDI device plugged in that has a audio over USB sound card built into it, like the iDJ Pro, then you'll be able to preview that, and that will come through your headphones rather than the master output. So that's quite a neat feature. So let's choose a track and get it loaded onto the deck. So as you load the track into the deck, you'll notice that the waveform along the top is no longer grey and a bit boring looking. It picks out various different colours, so it shows you more clearly the breakdown of that piece of music. So if there's a lot of vocals, it might appear in one colour. If there's lots of just beats or bass line, it might appear in a different colour. And what you'll see is if you press the vinyl, you can see that waveform has a lot of detail, and right down to the point of maybe a kick drum is highlighted in green, a snare might be orange, and vocals might be sort of icy blue perhaps. So the vinyl view is fine for learners, and it's what most people would recognise as being DJing. But if you click on the waveform button up here, the decks slide back and you've got a zoomed in waveform view. So this is going to appeal to the more professional experienced DJs perhaps. So they're moving away from the gimmicky realisation of something physical and using the best aspects of iOS and a large screen as well. So you have a constantly scrolling waveform, and it scrolls away from you. And you can do all the same sort of things you could do with a vinyl. But on this view you can see the beat grid, which you can adjust if you wanted to by tapping that little pencil icon there. And the beat grid is useful because it's not only used in effects, but also this little beat slice button up here. And what that allows you to do is it breaks up the track in beats. So for 4 bars of a beat, it will break it up, so you can tap around with that, and that works as the track is playing as well. so quite handy. The other clever thing on this screen that you don't get on the vinyl view is this slip button here. So as the track is playing, if I chose to go like that, what happens is that the track will make that sound, but then as I lift my finger it will pick up from where it thought it should have been. So and you'll see as I'm doing that, a smaller waveform is displayed on the inside as well. So it's pretty clever stuff. So as well as the improvements to the library and now the constantly scrolling waveform view, you also have this button in the middle. Press that. Okay, so the sample pads are an area where Algoriddim have really improved things. Previously they were only available to IDJ Pro or Vestax Spin 2 users, but now this is available through the app itself. So what you can do on this screen is play these samples. You can adjust their volume, which is good as well. And not only that, you can edit the samples. So if you tap here, you can load from a bunch of sample packs, or you can load one of your own samples. Very, very clever indeed. And what you can do is load samples using audio copy and paste. So you can copy samples from other apps on iOS and dump them in. You can also, if you go here, you can also build up your own set of sample pads, and you can colour them as well. So something you can do here. And the other cool thing is not only can you have samples being dragged into the app, but you can also sample off either deck as well. So very clever stuff. What I can also do while this track is playing is just slide that to one side to display the samples here. So I can be playing my track and so you can be mucking around with your samples too, and you can do that sample playing on the vinyl deck view as well. So the other cool feature with the iPad app is now it has a portrait view, which was available for iPhone and iPod Touch, but it now means that you can plug your iPad into a mixer along with CDJs or turntables, and you've got your music library from your iPad ready to go. Now for this setup, personally I'd prefer a scrolling waveform view, which means I can still do all the usual stuff, and I've got my sample pads there as well, but it gives a really good clear indication of what's going on in that track. So that's not the end of the story. Let's take a look at the IDJ Pro. When you load an iPad with DJ2 into a Numark IDJ Pro, the interface for DJ2 changes slightly. So you've still got vinyl view, and you can switch between that or your scrolling waveform. If you're on vinyl view, you can keep this as an overall waveform view, or you can have the vinyl and a slightly zoomed in waveform. Actually my preference here is to go for that. So the overall waveform is nicely displayed and the scrolling waveform is all there. Along the bottom you have an XY FX pad, some instant FX buttons, and you've also got a pad for looping. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's a very quick stuttered loop with a high pass low pass filter enabled, and that works even if the track is paused. So that's quite handy. I quite like that sort of effect as well. The IDJ Pro has all sorts of other clever features in it, so if you're playing a track and you press shift and reverse, quite handy, you can send it into a momentary reverse, and not only can you use the jog wheels for scratching, but if you want to do some quick transformer style cut across without using a crossfader, maybe you're not too certain on what you're doing, you can press shift and and those cuts will be in time to whatever track you've got loaded on the other deck. In this case I haven't got anything loaded on that deck, so it's using the BPM of this track, which is about 122. The IDJ Pro has a whole bunch of other features which we've talked about before, but I really wanted to show that you can still flick between vinyl view and a scrolling waveform on the IDJ Pro, and you've got this big loop pad here at the bottom as well as your other effects. You've still got your sample pads. On the IDJ Pro you only have 8 available, whereas I think it was a few more on the standard version of the app. So there you go, that's DJ2 by Algoriddim.